All right, cool. How's it going, guys? Glad we could be back here with in another meetup. Looks like we skipped last month due to the 4th of July, but we're back like we never left. Today we're discussing ephemeral groups, creative destruction inside the firm. Um, I really like that title, especially the second part. But I think today is going to be. I think we're in for a real treat. Watson's put together a pretty nice paper. I read it earlier today, and looking forward to discussing these things. So I guess let's get started. Watson, you want to take it away?
All right. Uh, Ephemeral Groups is something that I've been working on and off here for maybe 3 to 6 months. It's been an idea I've been playing around with in the back of my head. Um, it kind of started a long time ago, actually, when I read Tom Peters' book, Reimagine, maybe in, 2005. Um, I would say I'd go back a little bit further than that, and I mentioned this in a paper. There's a really good book called Good to Great, and then and also another one called Built to Last by a guy named Jim Collins. He's a professor of business at Stanford, and he basically he outlines a bunch of characteristics that businesses should follow, or any organization, really, even a church, should follow in order to last for a very long time. And then that book it's often quoted, and so it's one of the most quoted books in other business books. So I'd recommend it. Now, Tom Peters comes along with his book Reimagine, and he like directly challenges Jim Collins, and these guys are kind of both titans in the, I guess, the business consultancy circles. Tom Peters has been, now that Peter Drucker has passed, I would say Tom Peters is the most influential management consultant at this point. Just because he's been doing it since the early 80s. And some of his books are like total quality management books, In Search of Excellence, and some of the things that were the buzzwords in the 80s. He popularized that stuff, and then did a full 180 in 2000. Anyways, Tom Peters turns around and says, no, some businesses should die. As a matter of fact, most of them should die. Things that linger are bad. Unless you solve a problem, you shouldn't exist. And I'm definitely summarizing what he's saying, but it's a really good book. Reimagine is a really, really good book. And he was talking about a lot of things before they happened, like the way Amazon allows you to use their infrastructure and everything like that. Lots of businesses, they thought that what he was saying was insane then, and now it's normal. So creative destruction is when, and it's a term, I think it's coined by Joseph Schumpeter, I believe is how you say his name. It's a term, or it's a process where within economics, even though the way we traditionally think of economics, we think of the markets and then businesses slowly getting better, and the bad businesses disappear because of they didn't adapt, they didn't evolve. Well, the whole idea of disruption and whole markets being, maybe even whole markets being destroyed, but definitely large entities being destroyed, that's Joseph Schumpeter is saying that that's not part of traditional economics. and he brings that to bear in some of his writings, and he calls it creative destruction. So what Ephemeral Groups is about is trying to take what he was saying and trying to take what some concepts from the book Innovative Dilemma and Innovators Dilemma and some other things and applying it to the workforce on the smaller level. So the Innovators Dilemma, Clayton Christensen, we talked about this before in some of our other papers, but the Innovators Dilemma, it simply is, like you can use this syllogism, good management obeys customer desires, customers desire more of the same of what they've already had, therefore good management obeys the desire for more of the same. So good managers obey the customers, but that's, given that customers want more of the same, that's not innovative. So you have this issue of going along the same path and not innovating, and that might make you think about someone like Steve Jobs, who basically says, I don't care what customers are asking for, I'm going to give them what I think they need. And the market catching up to him and saying, yeah, I actually don't want to take the battery out of my phone. Things like that. So that's the Innovator's Dilemma. And these are some things that are reasons why you need to have some kind of destruction of entities. Big entities have a hard time innovating. That's the Innovator's Dilemma. Big entities create empires. Empires are, there's a bunch of different ways you can look at what an empire is, but the person I'm quoting in the paper, his name is Stephen Rhodes. His book Power, Empire Building, and Mergers. His argument is that economists don't really talk about empires because they're hard to model, but there are other motivators for businesses other than just profit. Power is also a motivator, and we should pay attention to that. Building an empire is trying to create a level of insulation against market shocks, but also, and you can do it just to be able to be insulated from, I guess, your competitors in some unfair way, maybe, or just trying to create political capital and use that. I mean, whatever it is that you can do to get an advantage that outside of the profit motive, that would be power. And so building an empire, in which can include all kinds of things, just creating red tape. Those types of things are things that end up happening at large, especially at large entities, whether it be a government organization or a large corporation. There's empire building all over. And then just inefficiencies. So the inefficiency at a large entity, people like to talk about government orgs being really inefficient, and people not having the right incentives. You might think of the DMV being a really bad place, but a really good example of government org being very inefficient and bad. But I would say also large corporate entities are the same way. Plenty of inefficiencies there. So large orgs tend to get lazy and rely on things other than competition to get an advantage, and other than innovation to get an advantage. Do you guys have any questions about that?
No, it feels like a good overview. Is my audio all right?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Do you want to kind of go through these? I know you kind of ran across all of it in general, but maybe we could dig into the sections of the document brought up.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, Josh or Ian, do y'all have comments or question in general, or do you want to dig into any of these? I don't know if y'all have looked at the different sections from creative destruction, innovation, empires, and inefficiencies.
I read through the paper a little earlier, and I mean, I liked it. I mean, just the biggest thing I'm taking from it now is, you know, I went to school for economics, and profit is definitely the driving force of every conversation. You know, and but to think about it with power, though, that's like a real world, and you would think obvious take on it that you should think about. And so it's interesting to, you know, I'm glad we're talking about it. Monolithic capitalism. It's cool.
How bad is my background noise? Out of curiosity.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay. I got the AC on in the carport, and I didn't know how bad it was. Can't remember. I think it was a podcast or something I was listening to recently, but they had an interesting thing about economics, and they were talking about how you think about it in terms of money and profit, but somebody somewhere said that a better definition is applying limited resources to try to achieve unlimited goals. I thought that was kind of interesting because that kind of power is definitely a goal, and comfort and
Mm-hmm.
isolation, all that are goals too. So that probably helps put it in a better perspective about you can't just analyze and make as much money as you can because that's not the whole story.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good way to look at it, and maybe even defining what an entrepreneur is too. Just someone who uses limited resources to obtain like what you said, unlimited goals or some type of goal. I've heard that definition of entrepreneurship before. So
Just to be clear, though, before we move on, were you classifying, you were putting innovation in the same boat as competitive capitalism, right?
well, innovation is just simply creating new products creating new products and services. So as far as putting it in the same boat as, what did you say?
Competitive capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's going to be in that
Okay.
boat.
All right, I'm gonna keep it in mind and see where we go from here. I just know that you used Apple as the direct example, and so I wanna think
Yeah,
about that. Yeah.
Steve Jobs, I'd say, just him. So really, what I say here is this portion is really talking about the innovator's dilemma, and the innovator's dilemma occurs in large companies. The solution to the innovator's dilemma is actually to divest, right? To create smaller entities. He had another book called The Innovator's Solution where he talked about that. So it's really more, that section is really more about the innovator's dilemma. So this next portion, free agents, I really wanted to try to capture the workforce and some of the co-working phenomena that we've all experienced, and and to talk a little bit about that, and then having been an independent contractor for a long time and working with other small groups, you have this perspective of people that tend to take regular W-2 work. There's sometimes they might have some fear of being what we're calling here a free agent, because it seems like it's a little bit more risky. But there are more and more people who are going the route of becoming in some way, some kind of free agent. And one thing, so to even talk about risk, that's one thing that what I'm calling friction, like a thing that would stop anything that stops you from coming together and creating a small group. I'm calling that friction in this paper. So with the free agents and the phenomenon, like what I'm saying here, or what we're quoting here, it's like 30% of the workforce, depending on how you look at it, can be looked at as free agents. Then that was in 2000. It should be more now. This section, it's really a culmination of a bunch of different books that I read. One of them was Andrew's book from the other co-working space that where we worked. The book that he wrote was really about the new age of work and how everyone is going to have to make some adjustments. There's more employers are going to have to make adjustments because people are demanding more autonomy. Individuals are having to make more adjustments because the way that the project management is occurring now, you are expected to be more autonomous. You're expected to be more self-directed, and all other kinds of other forms of work. Those things are kind of pushing the whole workforce in a certain direction, and trying to make it so that people can not feel like it's so risky, and feel comfortable with doing small 3-month or 6-month projects, and moving from project to project, being able to handle their own finances, and all of those things are all important for the free agent. So a lot of what traditionally would be issues that a consultancy would deal with, as far as getting people work, capturing work, and an individual consultant would be aware of those things. Now it's starting to be more a regular person at a coffee shop that might be some designer. Before he would be with the design company, and now he's a designer for 20 hours of the week, and he might walk dogs or be an Uber driver for another 20 hours a week. These types of things are more and more popular now. You guys have any questions about the free agents?
No, I don't.
All right.
Yeah.
The friction, I guess, I don't know what all you have on this outside of the document. I was thinking of some of the things that are happening with places like Uber and other companies where they're trying to take advantage of both sides. They want they want a workforce that they have control over, because that's the normal thing with to increase profits into one centralized area, while taking advantage of the benefits that you get with a distributed workforce. And that may be kind of similar to what we've talked about on meritocracies topics in the past, where companies that seem like they're working on a fair distributed model turns out that it's more of a veil, and underneath it's not going that way. Anyway, so I don't know if that would be related to the fiction, but that's friction, sorry, not fiction. But with free agents, I don't know. There's a lot of pushback, is I guess what I was what I've been noticing being in the field, where as a free agent and then as trying to be a part of a group that's promoting free agents.
Yep, it is. Uber's trying to push the envelope. I remember Microsoft getting in some big trouble with what they were calling temporary employees, and the employees didn't know that they were contractors. This was right around 2000, 2001. And they got sued. A bunch of people who thought they were W-2 turned around and sued him. So I expect something like that to go on with Uber at some point, maybe. But who knows?
It's already happening.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting is on the other side, you have groups like Arcade City that are at least seemingly promoting to have a fully distributed alternative to Uber, and you have the drivers that seem to be happy with it, but then the city itself is not happy with it. So there's, I think, just everyone is having a hard time dealing with the ideas. We're built on structures, and these type of things, distributed work, don't fit within those structures, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of resistance.
Politics, yeah. So that would be something. And then really, the whole thing with talking about the ephemeral group, it's really, there's one level of resistance that you will meet as the individual free agent, and then there's another level of resistance where you try to form a group in order to capture work that you need more than one entity or one group or one individual to accomplish. That's kind of more what this paper is about, but politics is definitely going to be a big problem. So
yeah, I think where that'll come into play directly with what you're talking about is once you've figured out the first level and you're able to capture market and larger players start seeing the impact, is whenever they're going to have a problem with a group like that.
Okay.
Welcome, Alexander.
How's it going?
Looks like we have someone that joined us. I think you're muted, Alexander. But...
All right.
Yeah, I was muting him and unmuting him. I saw as soon as he joined the car noise, and so he may have unmuted and then I muted him back or something. But
okay,
glad you could join us, Alex. One quick comment though, about the whole like political thing, whether that's a monolithic capitalistic move from a business, or even just like the old guard not wanting to see change. It just comes to, I think it directly this applies to this topic when it comes to friction of forming a group, and people actually these businesses saying giving these internal benefits or something like that, and taking away freelancers from the pool of people who could make a stronger ephemeral group. But that's just how I can see it applying to this situation. But let's see.
All right.
Yeah.
So the next section, I tried to keep game theory out of this thing, but I had to add a little bit of it just because it's so fun. But coalition formation. So one way to look at the formation of any group is to look at it as a n-player game. And so if you were to say that there's a a project out there that requires multiple people to accomplish. The first group to get together and form that coalition and present a good proposal kind of wins. You know, there might be some cutoff where 3 or 4 groups or whatever get together and do their proposals, and then they win. So you can look at you can look at the whole problem as an n-player game problem. And so that's just a nice little thing. If you like, I have some references in here for if you want to read a little bit more about n-player game theory. Some of the other things, as far as cooperation goes, you can have positive and negative outcomes. I had a larger section in here originally, but this just talks a little bit about collusion. So your positive cooperation, you have n-player game, there's a certain kind of n-player game that's a cooperative game. And those are the types of games where the people who cooperate win the game, essentially. The ones who form a coalition of people will win the game. That would be a positive cooperative solution where they concentrate on economies of scale and scope and that type of thing. Negative cooperation would be something like collusion, like cartels, people doing price fixing and those types of things. Empire building can be a form of collusion as well, and some of those things. A lot of people don't know that or realize that Adam Smith actually talked about monopolies. So, like the father of capitalism talked about monopolies and that they were a negative thing, and I have a reference for that in there if you want to take a look. Talk a little bit here about network organizations. We reviewed this before. The basic idea is an entity, and this is something that occurs. Some of you may have experienced it, but if you work in a place where they'll call a certain organization or unit inside of a corporation, they'll call it a profit center versus a responsibility center or a cost center. You can describe that type of organization as a network organization. And the profit centers kind of are, you're supposed to, in theory, just leave them be, because they're showing a profit. So they'll be the ones that command the resources. Whatever they ask for, they get. That type of. Sometimes you might find some prima donnas in those areas, but the incentives all line up nicely, so long as they're making money and they're making money for the larger umbrella organization. You kind of let them or leave them naturally pursue their own ends, and interfering with that is kind of going against market forces and all that type of stuff. So traditionally, network organization, the profit centers aren't really allowed to form autonomously. They're kind of set up in a hierarchy, so manager will put together a team, but it's still more autonomous than a regular hierarchical structure. And then I define here what a profit center is. It's just any entity that can make some type of revenue on the market. You can be a profit center as an individual, like a consultant in a law firm, an attorney in a law firm, or what have you, or it could be groups. I'm going to talk a little bit more about friction here. So friction is just anything that occurs in a startup or tear down of a coalition of an ephemeral group. So, you guys have any questions about this?
The whole strategy there about resources and letting the market decide, it makes sense, but it's just, I think it just comes down to, especially for existing organization, is how big is your bank? Because the reason people are centralized is because they don't trust that these groups will form at all, or even or they don't know how long it'll take them to become efficient. It's like it'd be interesting to see, how do you mitigate the risk of dying here while you wait on people to while you figure out, who the market likes or what group combinations really work.
Yeah, yeah, bankrolling some group, that's really a problem of friction as well, right? If there's a startup cost, you're going to have to somehow bankroll it. You're going to have to pay for that somehow. Um, Minimizing that is probably the main goal, I would think. And being just cash positive right from the beginning is kind of what I was having in mind with some of these. I mean, you can imagine being at a coffee shop, three people get together to write some software, and then all of a sudden they have to borrow some money. No, that's just broken right from the beginning. This kind of thing is more. There's more friction, more costs outside of just having to borrow some money. I mean, just how do you? One big point or problem is how do you split the money? You three get together and work on something. You do that one time, and then later, don't ever do that again because splitting the money is a problem. Everybody thinks that they're worth more after you've already accomplished the goal. So trying to figure all that stuff out is a big part of the friction. There's lots of things to worry about outside of literally money, because that's like a non-starter to me. I'm sure some executive, if three of you got together and you said, hey, we have this idea we need, but just go ahead and front us 50,000. Okay, no, go back.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Just, the non-starter thing, yeah, it makes sense. And just like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just that's the part that interests me. You got to be, I mean, you've got to be you got to have some type of risk tolerance going in, boy. But I guess that's just the nature of a freelancer anyway. So, who are we talking to? So, yeah.
Anybody else?
No, I think it's interesting. I like to see how it's applied in smaller groups. We've looked at stuff like Mondragon, and other ones. We've started talks with some other smaller groups, and it seems like the profit centers and stuff would match up with some of the things places like Inspiral is doing. They have a lot of it split out, but then you're talking about the individuals can be profit centers. I mean, that makes a lot of sense when we're looking at if you're collaborating even as a group with someone who's already well established and figuring out how to work with an entity that's a one person and scaling that up to working with an entity that's a larger group and being, I guess, flexible to fit with that's pretty interesting. You got to have your roles need to be flexible enough to fit that, I guess, or your structure.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like when you're when you're inside of some umbrella organization, and some people want to get together and they've got the customer and they can make the money, and then they overhead is going to the umbrella corporation, and you're not hurting the brand, then those people should be left alone. That's the only rules. if they're not costing anything, they're not hurting the brand, they're not making you look silly or anything like that, then there should be no politics involved outside of that. Just nothing. If they can supply some need on the market and it doesn't hurt the brand, again, they should be left alone. That's kind of a frictionless thing. When you start saying, okay, I have to borrow something, well, that's more, more friction.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Anyone else have comments? Ian? Anybody? Alex? Okay. Serendipity.
Yeah. I tried to include some examples at the end of the paper that will illustrate what an ephemeral group environment would look like. Module organizations is a little bit more complicated, but they're kind of like a network organization, but it's kind of like a plug-and-play units within the organization. So kind of think of profit centers, but they're more standardized. Imagine that they talk to each other using a certain protocol. If you're a tech person, then you kind of get that. But they really focus more on the economies, scale, scope, that kind of thing. The next example, and I kind of wish Chris was around, but talking about DevOps, it's interesting with the people who are really into DevOps when they're communicating the value of it, so continuous delivery and integration and these types of things, there's a kind of an assumption that, of course, it's valuable. But I think that people don't, it's DevOps to the level of with the continuous delivery and everything, instant infrastructure, all these types of things. It's one of those things where if you have it, then you like it, and then when it's missing, then you feel the pain, and then you want it. But trying to communicate why you want it is difficult. And I think one of the reasons why is because it allows you it creates a serendipitous environment. So people can spin up environments. There's no friction for spinning up the environment. Cross-functional teams can form. So two software teams can get together, or a software team and a network group. They'll say, oh, I want to try this security configuration or something like that to see if it'll work in production. And all these different things can happen. The groups can form, try something, and then disappear in one day or an hour or whatever. And it's a really good environment for experimentation. It empowers teams and these types of things. And then that's an example of an environment conducive to ephemeral groups. Microservices is another kind of, like I say here, is a microservice is kind of the technical, it corresponds, the technical side, it corresponds to what a module organization is. If you build a microservice, it's kind of, there's many benefits that you can get from it if it's done right or what have you. But one of them, you have this independently deployable service that's built around business capabilities, and so you kind of get around a lot of the issues of trying to have to deploy things in lockstep with other development teams and all of these other things that kind of stop you when you develop a monolithic system. I guess in theory, if you're developing everything with microservices, I guess if you want to look at, say, I don't know if I would call Amazon's services microservices, but if you were to do that, you have this. Everything is just loosely coupled, and so people can kind of compose what service that they own with other services to build things. And so there's less friction for trying things again. And then the example of the SAP partners is just an example of an entity, SAP. They had an issue, which is, okay, we have this software, it's very complicated. Are we going to offer consulting? And they said no, they don't do any consulting. They're going to just have a partnership organization, and all the partners can go out, do whatever they want to do. They're self-organizing. If they just let the market decide. If the partner's bad, then they'll die. So that's it. And the partners can get together, build aftermarket services, whatever they want to do. But they're all autonomous and they all organize. So that's at the very macro level almost for a large entity, just allowing people to do, or other large organizations to do whatever they want within their umbrella. You guys have any questions about any of those?
No, it's the I like it. I mean, it definitely has a theme of uh you know professional services types of companies, and I just take it back to like what I just said as far as just you know mitigating risk as much as possible here, um, for your ephemeral group to be successful, or for you to even be successful and to try out and to join a group is, people are risking, I feel like, more or less their time here than resources. And I mean, and I say that, loosely because I mean you have to eat, but it's at least it's not, I guess you're giving up your time to get started, not your resources to get started, and I guess that I just see the theme here from SP, is it SAP? What you say? Yeah, from SAP to but I mean I guess even the module, I can't see that one, but the module groups. But the module groups, that's a little different though, because I feel like that's a structure put in place for you. But yeah, I mean the module organizations, yeah. But yeah, I like it. And so I feel like it's yeah, the module groups. I guess that's counter to what I'm saying. That's not a professional service per se, but more so a just a group. Yeah. So yeah, module organization goes against that theme though. So yeah, that works. That works too. But
yeah, the modules are more integrated inside of the network. It's kind of people have specialties, or units have specialties, but they can go after the work that they want within the network organization, but they just are really efficient at what they're doing, and they kind of publish you can, if you look at it from a technical standpoint, kind of, they publish an API for themselves and say, we do this, and people can interface with them. So what's supposed to happen is, what supervenes on top of that is a bunch of efficiencies, because everybody works in a certain way and has certain quality of service and all this stuff like that. Okay,
do you feel like the module organizations require a certain size for the group before you start doing this?
The way that they were saying in Basenko, and that's in the economics or strategy book, they were implying that it did.
Okay. I guess my only other thought was, I've always felt like the microservices movement and the DevOps kind of are the similar philosophies, and they're just, you have people that were more coming from either operations or development. That's really all it feels like. And they've kind of met in this middle ground where talking about trying to make it easy for you to make change, whether that's between software because you've created the microservices and little bitty units of code that are easy to communicate with and you can change other parts, or on the DevOps side, a lot of that started from talking about automating the manual task and then eventually broke down to say, here are the different parts from development all the way through production, and how do you put those in units so that you can replace and add to that. And oh, do you want to do code reviews now? Well, we'll add that right here. And the microservices is the same sort of thing, because you're talking about API development, and you could have one, you're talking to one thing, and now you say, well, that's going to talk to something else. Oh.
Well, that's the whole paper, and we're coming up on an hour here. So, if you guys have anything else or don't have anything else, we can kind of wrap it up.
I'm good.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I don't have anything else either. I think the I just like the concept of an ephemeral group. It takes away the, I mean, we talked about there being friction to finding people and, and getting started, but it's that's a whole lot easier than getting a loan from the bank and then getting money to hire this person and that person and taking care of all of the responsibilities yourself, as a entrepreneur. There are, like, even if doing the traditional, let's say, hierarchical startup route, there's usually 2 people, 3 people, and they're wearing these many hats. Well, yeah, in the ephemeral group, it may happen as well, but what's making the money is split between experts, not split between a few who are generalists at it, and I feel like I just feel like it's, regardless of all the friction, I think it's still a smarter and more efficient way to go if you can get it right, as far as getting started, ramping up quicker. But that is, giving all things equal as far as funds are concerned.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I've got though. Sorry, go for it, Taylor.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think I talked with Watson before the call, but not on this. Besides the Mandragoon and Inspiral, which I mentioned, which seem to have some groups that form, and they do that. The other company that I was thinking that's not a cooperative is Valve. They're supposed to have a flat structure and all that, but they talk about having groups that form. I just brought up their handbook here on the Hangouts, but it says project teams often have an internal structure that forms temporarily to suit the group's needs. This is in the section where they're talking about anyone can come up with project ideas and stuff that may be valuable. They present it, and if people are interested and think it would be, good, then they can join, and they work together to try to get that project job done, and then when that's completed, they split back off and continue to do other things. Also, people can be part of multiple groups. A colleague of ours that Watson was saying might be able to talk about the DevOps, he's talked to me about wanting the capability for people to join different aspects of groups. You know, so if you have skill set that may be utilized across multiple groups, being a part of those, he thinks is a good thing. So, anyways, but Valve handbook I think is relevant for the ephemeral groups.
That's a good addition. All right, guys, I think that's it. I'm going to keep this thing to an hour. So,
Well, do we have any idea what we want to discuss next month yet? Or
I was thinking distributed estimation. Estimation in self-organized groups. If you
So,
guys got anything that you want to go over, then let me know.
okay.
Okay.
No, I don't have anything right now. Really quick though, did you say distributed estimation, like ESTI estimation?
Yep.
Okay. So, what estimating like cost for services, for instance?
Estimating how much, like for proposals and trying to say how long something's going to take, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And then saying, it's not top down, it's not a hierarchy, it's a group of people. So how do you do estimations in a cooperative where everybody's an owner?
Okay. Sounds interesting. I've been a part of that, for sure. So, yeah, let's do it. All right, guys. Well, yeah, I mean, no one else has anything. I'm finished as well, so I guess we'll see you guys next month.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good one.